Welcome back to the REI Marketing Weekly. It's your host, Josh Culler with Color Media and REI.video. And I'm just super pumped to finally get one of my good friends, Eric Brewer, out of, you're in York, right? Pennsylvania? York, Pennsylvania.
York, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Most
All
people,
of it.
Harrisburg's obviously the capital. So by the way, I want to say it was the Wall Street Journal, 7th hottest real estate market in the United States.
Is Harrisburg?
Yeah, or projected to be.
Wow.
Article with you. But yeah, it's projected. It was either 5 or 7. It was up there. I was in.
That's crazy.
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. And I've been down there with you before, and it doesn't seem like that crazy of a market. So
well, I think that's what they're talking about is because of the affordability.
Yeah.
Largely what it talked about is literally from my desk, it's an hour and 30 minutes to get to Philly, 2 hours to get to DC, 40 minutes to get to Baltimore, 25 minutes to get to Lancaster. So like we're in the middle of nowhere, but close to everywhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you're not too far from New York City too. So it's like all driving
3 hours.
distance. Yeah. It's all driving distance for all of that. So that's interesting, man. So like you guys already heard like Eric, he's already talking about his market and everything. He knows this stuff extremely well. I am just extremely excited to be jumping in with him on a topic that has not been opened up yet. So we've had a lot of guests on the show talk about how they're using realtors to get deals and all that kind of stuff, but nowhere near the depth that we're about to open this up with Eric here. So Eric's a good friend of mine. He's been a longtime client of ours for over a year now. And that's been just absolutely incredible. The dude's got so much wisdom in his back pocket, and he's forgotten way more than I have learned in my entire life. And so I'm excited to have Eric on the show, somebody that I look up to very much. Eric, do me a favor for the people that don't know who you are. Introduce yourself, just a brief background of who you are, what you do, how long you've been doing all that, and just give us the rundown, man, and we'll jump on in.
Yeah, so we operate out of South Central Pennsylvania. I've been in business since 2004. We do about 200 wholesale transactions a year, and then about another 150 to 200 turnkey and fix and flip wholesale transactions a year. That's about it. We do a pretty substantial direct to seller business as far as marketing. And then we do have a considerable amount of success still buying off the MLS. And we do that almost predominantly through just developing relationships and marketing directly to real estate agents.
Sure, absolutely. So that's all great stuff. We're gonna talk about this, man. And I honestly am just gonna like hand it to you and say, go, Eric, and then I'll ask questions along the way. But Eric, right before we jumped on the show here, we were discussing what we're gonna talk about. And one of the things he brought up was marketing in a different perspective. Like he literally did one of these with the blinders, and I've got a hat on, so this kind of helps. But the way we've been marketing as real estate investors, it's not always the best way, and it's not the most efficient way. And you're definitely, like Eric told me right before the show, he said, if you're going to like act like these guys and you're going to do the same thing, you're not going to stand out in any way, shape or form. You are going to be them. And so differentiating yourself from the competition and dealing with other wholesalers. And now more than ever, the information on learning how to be a wholesaler and acquire deals it's more accessible than ever. Eric even said for the first 3 to 5 years of your business, you got your teeth kicked in and you didn't have anything to latch onto in order to learn all this stuff. And now we do. So we've got all these coaches that are teaching people how to wholesale. Now you're dealing with them. The market saturated with bandit signs, market saturated with RVMs, text blasting, cold calling. Eric, how do we get out of this, man? What do we need to do? You open it up. I know exactly what you're going into. Let's go.
I told you, I think it could be a little premature, but just through this sort of research and development and due diligence process I've been going through for about the last 60 days, there's just a few very clear market conditions that for me have given us, I think, the opportunity to pivot our marketing, and I'm pretty excited about what those results may look like. So this actually just really started for me as a member of the Collective Genius Mastermind. I was asked to be one of their sort of mentors and trainers in CG Select, which is a group that's designed for people that are doing, I'd say, a moderate amount of volume, where the original CG group was reserved for people that were doing, say, north of 100 deals a year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing to me that literally they talked about developing this group one day, and then like 2 months later, there's 40 people sitting in this room that made a significant investment to be in that mastermind and surrounded by a lot of like-minded people.
And real quick, I want to park on that too, Eric, and capitalize on this opportunity. You've been a longtime member of CG. I just joined last quarter, and thanks to you for helping with that referral as well. And Gary Harper, and dude, best mastermind I've ever been a part of. Like, it is incredible. If you're an active real estate investor, you gotta check this place out, man.
And a lot of what I'm going to share with you now, a lot of what I'm going to share with you now is through collaboration of a few people inside of that group.
Yeah.
As we work together on, marketing and new, campaigns and initiatives, and trying to wrap our head around what's working now, what stopped working, and what, if anything, we could do to impact those results.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I'm sitting in that group, I'm literally surrounded by a bunch of people that are doing 50 to 60 transactions a year, and most haven't been in the business 24 months yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at that, and of course, we can all see, it's very visible, the massive influx of new people to doing either part-time fix and flip or full-time wholesaling, or a little mix of both. And it's created a uber competitive market. And then, like we were talking about, you also have people with, enough experience that have created systems and processes and enough of a brand, so to speak, that are now coaching. So you're taking people, myself, when I started, that it took 3 to 5 years to feel like I had some legs under me, to now you can align yourself with a mastermind or a coach or a mentor, and for relatively small amount of money, accelerate that 5-year learning curve to 12 to 18 months. Yep. And so as I started to dig into that, right, like everybody's just, it's all competitive, you got to spend way more in advertising. I started to look for blind spots. And what I found was everybody was preaching, a lot of the same marketing approaches because they worked. But one thing I believe about marketing is it works till it doesn't. It might sound like super simple. And sometimes it's because there's been things that have evolved about your client that messaging no longer resonates with them. Or literally, if everybody started saying just do it, Nike would lose a little bit of the effectiveness. So they're able to protect that trademark and that messaging, by licensing it. In our business, you can't license, although people have tried. We buy houses all cash, as is, quick closing, all that stuff. And so everybody does it. So now what I think is happening, and what I've witnessed happening, is what used to work for everybody now works for nobody. Mm-hmm. Right? And a friend of mine did a pretty significant case study that saw that, like, no matter how great the message is if it's on yellow paper or a yellow card, that is synonymous to the client with a wholesaler. Well, what's a wholesaler? That's a guy that's going to tie up my property and not buy it. So you can put Better Business Bureau, been in business for 300 years.
All the testimonials are wanting, it's not going to matter.
And once it's on yellow paper, not everybody, but a large portion of our client base has a negative connotation with that. And then so does some of the language. They don't, quite frankly, care about the word cash. Yeah. And they don't get actual cash. They get a check or a wire, right? And it seems like almost some type of scam or tomfoolery, right? Like, what do you think, I'm dumb? Like, cash, you're not going to physically give me cash. But then we put a stack of $100 bills on our postcard because we want to know how serious we are about cash. So as I started digging into it, we looked for different ways to say the same thing that might not, lump us into that category. And what we found is it wasn't just a slight modification. It was an extreme pivot away from what we've done. And we had to figure out a way to make sure that they still knew that we would buy their house. Or what I really have come across is, I think our goal is to figure out how to deliver that message, but do so through a realtor, right? Which requires strategic partnerships. There's a lot of compliance and disclosure that comes along with it, which will probably scare off 50 to 90% of the investor population, which to me makes it even more appealing, because the harder the climb, the less likely people are to begin to scale the mountain, right? Or I often use the barrier of entry. The harder the barrier of entry, the more I want to run towards it, because it's a safer place to be.
Mm-hmm.
So what I realized was, as we went through, and you and I talked about this, and you knew it was a loaded question, but you played along, which I appreciate, was when you look at sellers and you look at any market, I don't care what market you're in, and you look at the amount of transactions that sold to an investor. So that's our customer. If they sold to an investor, that's our client, or that's a client that we would love the opportunity to communicate with, right? We look at our markets that we do business in each quarter, and we see time and time again that over the course of 3 months in one market here, there's, say 150 transactions that sold to an investor off market. In that same time frame, there's 1,000 clients that sold their property to an investor through a real estate agent. Now, a lot of you are already sitting there going, well, that doesn't work, because if they sell it through a realtor, they're going to want too much money. That conversation typically takes place after they've established the relationship with the real estate agent, and then they collectively decide what they're going to price it for. Mm-hmm. And hey, by the way, even though they sold it through a real estate agent, investors still bought it. So somebody saw equity in the deal or an opportunity to make money. So my point is, in the direction we're aggressively moving in now, is if we can strategically partner with a real estate agent that can be trained how to acquire a property and still follow all the compliance, all the disclosure, all of that good stuff, and say, hey, what are the things that most people are concerned about when they call We Buy Houses place? It's a scam. I'm going to get ripped off. I'm doing it alone. Is it legitimate? So by literally, and we talked about this when we talk about marketing, about why TV works in some markets better than others. And everybody always says the same thing. It's assumed credibility. Mm-hmm. You accomplish the same thing by
it's assumed credibility with that target demographic, right?
Correct.
Like that demographic you're going after, the 45, 50 plus, it's automatic credibility when you're in that.
Dude, like that. An acceptable direct mail response is 1%. Like, in what other anything is 1% success considered acceptable? It's not, right? It's just become to be
the normal. Yeah, it's the standard.
Yeah, so everybody else gets 1%, so that's cool. So 99% of the time you fail, and that's no.
Yeah.
So I believe, and within 6 months I'll have actual data to support it. But I think if you send an appropriately crafted message from a real estate agent that resonates with someone that still wants an easy transaction, you got to. They do not want to pay commissions. The other thing I can tell you is, I talk about people. They sell us a house at a discount because they see value in what we bring to the transaction. They'd rather sell us a property for $20,000 below, right? Or give us a $20,000 discount because of the value we bring, than to get $20,000 higher selling price and have an agent make $6,000 for something that they believe brought no value to the transaction.
Sure.
Well, like, you sold it, but I mean, all you did was put a sign in the yard. Well, I mean, technically you're correct, but having the licensing to be able to put the sign in the yard and expose it to the MLS, but that's not how the consumer sees it. They see, I'm not paying that guy $6,000 to do nothing, but I will allow the investor to get a $20,000 discount because he's putting he's got skin in the game. So we can argue about that and try and prove them they're wrong, or you can pivot your marketing behind that and actually say, hey, not only will you get credibility, which is assumed just by being partnered, like for us, we would partner with Keller Williams, our local brokerage here. And there's an instant credibility. You don't have to go through the transaction alone, right? They're more likely to, at least in the very beginning, feel that they're more likely to get a fair price, which is one of the bigger challenges, right? Like, when we answer the phone, people are like, yeah, I was thinking about calling. I'm just concerned you guys are going to want to pay nothing for it. Mm-hmm. A lot of that, just because you've partnered with and the messaging has come from a real estate agent, goes completely away. So I believe we'll be able to drive our response rates up to 3 to 4%. And then really the only real challenge for us then is, how do you blend a hybrid message that brings all of the benefits of selling to an investor, right? Eliminates all the downside with all of the upside of a real estate agent, but eliminates all of the downside of the real estate agent. I think it's pretty, when I say it's not easy, but it's simple. Like for me, I showed you, we just made a list, pros and cons. How do we eliminate and combine? And I think we found the messaging. And I can tell you, it's for us, it's no longer the handwritten, Sharpie, yellow postcard in your face. It's a much more professional, crafted message that essentially says that we can offer you a reliable, fair transaction.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see where those results go. It's funny that the timing of this happens. I'm literally 90% done building this, and then mapping out how it gets delivered. Just when you partner with a brokerage and you enter licensing and all that stuff in, you add a lot of credibility to the transaction, but you also have a considerable amount of liability because you have to make sure that you follow all those guidelines. But for us, we've always followed every law, moral, legally, whatever it was anyway. So to us, again, it just creates a higher barrier of entry. And what you've done now, if you're able to accomplish it, is separate yourself from the masses that are all sending the same postcard with the same message that they've been taught by the coaches or the gurus or wherever they're accumulating this. The majority of people, are using the same type of messaging. And again, it works till it doesn't. And I think what we're seeing now is the results for that is starting to diminish. And if you're looking to do 5 or 6 deals a year, maybe it doesn't have much of an impact on you, but our monthly marketing budget here is about $70,000. And we're super intentional about measuring the ROI on every single one of those campaigns. And as direct mail has continued to be consistent, the gap between the ROI on that and some of the other things that we're doing has gotten greater, which makes direct mail look significantly less lucrative, but it also provides the largest volume of transactions. So what I wanted to do was figure out how can I do more transactions to close the gap, right? And it's not just sending more mail. Like it's just not. Like a lot of people I think would say, well, we just need to mail more people. Well, there's still such a small portion of the seller, that sellers that are going to sell you a property. So expanding, I think, just gives you even more diminishing returns. So the bottom line for us is sound less like a flipper, sound less like a wholesaler, find out and really think about what your client's needs are. And I think a lot of what you got to be able to do is separate yourself from everybody else. And I don't think that just being, the highest price, or because people have had someone pay them more and back out of a contract, they've seen that. I think the cat's out of the bag, man. Like it used to be 10 years ago that, wholesaling real estate was something that was, this little niche. And now it's like hop on TikTok. You can't go more than 3 minutes without seeing 4 dudes on cold calls or selling their contracts, or telling you what an assignment fee is, right? So the barrier of entry for wholesaling is so low. So you got to level your game up, and it starts with marketing and messaging so that people can actually see that you don't just claim to be different, that your messaging is already different. And that's where we're headed.
Man, that is a lot of incredible stuff. And it seems like, so obviously you have a lot of upfront work to do in order to put something like this together. But I feel like something like this is going to be, you're going to be able to coast this for a long time. Because like you said, like people are so in the habit, it's a normal thing to get a 1%, response rate on direct mail. And that's how it's been for 2 or 3 years. And so putting something like this together and putting it on autopilot and really, really going hard after it, I mean, you're going to be able to coast on this with no competition for at least 2 to 3 years minimum. Like, I mean, it's just going to be a whole game changer. And here's the thing, guys, it's like, you think about brokerages. So they're teaming up with a Keller Williams brokerage that's local to them. And there's only so many brokerages that you can partner up with in your market, right? So if Eric here is going to partner with Keller Williams, more than likely they're probably not, and this may be a deal that you're working out with them or whatever, but I would think that, they're not going to be working with any other investors to do the same deal. So I think that this is a really, really good opportunity, and it just takes a little bit of thinking and strategizing in order to put this together. And Eric's got this here. So Man, guys, this is it.
It took a little bit of some mad scientist whiteboard action. But yeah, I mean, and then, eventually I'll show you a snapshot, and it won't look on the surface too much different, but like, it's just a little,
it's so clean.
It's softer. This guy actually answer the phone when you call. So
yeah,
some consistency there with not using stock. Right. And then talk about cash. We just talk about like what we've learned is, then we're fortunate enough to be on some major networks and television. We saw that, some people resonate with that and saw some value just in some brand notoriety by, aligning ourselves with some other recognizable names. It's hard, right? It took a lot of and it's a little scary because you get used to 1%.
Yeah.
And we say how crappy it is. It's like, well, okay, at least I know what to expect. I send out 1,000 postcards, I'm going to get X amount of leads. I just believe in, again, that there's an element of innovation in this business, particularly in the marketing aspect, that if you don't, you're going to put yourself in a tough spot. And I think this is the next, and let's look at like OfferPad and Zillow, like they're not, look at their ads, right? And I know they have a slightly different business model, but what they're doing way more transactions than any of us, right? And it leads with their marketing message. It's a softer, more direct, like we can't always just prey, sounds like a harsh word, but prey on the desperation factor.
Yeah.
Like even if I'm desperate, I don't need you to tell me I'm desperate. Like I already know I owe 3 years worth of taxes. I don't need you to rub it in my face. Because quite frankly, if you know that I feel like you have a tactical advantage against me, and I'm less likely to call you.
Yep.
Right. So like that's the one thing we did. So we're going to continue to obviously message from the investor We Buy Houses segment, but we're also going to share that data. I've already paid for the data. I've already paid for the phone numbers. I already have all the addresses. We're going to start with a smaller segment of that database. We're in constant communication with 120 to 130,000 new pieces of data and sellers at any given time, that we're not following up with. These are people that we believe that if we message correctly with the right frequency, have a high likelihood to reach out to us to have a conversation. So we're going to take probably a third of that and probably the higher price point, the more desirable zip codes, we believe those people would resonate, with that realtor message even more. Like, frankly, the absent landlord, like he's not worried about you taking advantage of him because he's pretty savvy, right? So you can continue that messaging to that clientele, but like the owner occupied 72-year-old, couple that's lived in the house for 35 years that has 3 kids that live out of state, like whether you admit it or not, like they are concerned about making a decision and then being criticized by their children. They just are. I've lost deals enough times where they're like, I'm 100% on board, but my son says I'm leaving way too much money on the table, even though I just want to be out of here. And he doesn't understand how much maintenance it is. If you've never seen it, like when people reach that age, there's a considerable amount of credit that they give to, rightfully so, their children. And they don't want to be criticized or the person at the assisted care facility. Edith, I can't believe you sold that house for $70,000. It's got to be worth 120. What were you thinking? Right. And they're alone. And they're concerned that they're leaving money on the table. So again, for us, we're excited to start to see how that pans out. Again, it's a little bit unknown, but that you do innovation wise is always going to be new and a little bit scary because you're blazing new trails. But if we just look at the historical data and what we know about the psychology of how people make decisions and the facts that there's data to support that more people sell their house to an investor through a realtor, and all of us are fighting over we're fighting over 10% of market share that represents 20% over the overall market. If you can get 1% of the larger piece of the pie, it's worth double fighting over the same deals we're all going after now, you know what I'm saying? Off market.
Yeah.
So it's a blend of off market. It's an off market seller that feels more conventional with an on market transaction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all that you ended with too is it's putting it together, but you use the word innovate, and like one of our core values is innovate for our business. And the reason why this is important is because I also agree. I think that real estate investors have been way too comfortable for too long with direct mail, with and that stuff works. And like you said, it still does work. And there's going to be a perfect blend that you're going to put together with going after tired landlords. And then, you know, there might be that small market share that they're distressed properties, and people would respond to those types of marketing channels. But also capping it with this and going hard after this, it's innovating your marketing, your messaging, the whole brand experience and everything. And that's really what marketing is, guys. Marketing changes all the freaking time. You can't just do it for 10 years straight and expect for it to, I figured this out, Eric, the only time tested marketing strategy that's worked since the dawn of time is referrals. That's it. There's no other marketing channel that has stood the test of time. And so because
if you think about the experience required to get a referral, it's evolved 50 times in the last 100 years.
Absolutely.
And then the other part about that messaging is, in today's market, you think you can put an ugly house on the MLS and have it sell?
Probably not. Oh, maybe. Yeah, maybe. You got
it. Of course, everything sells right now, dude. Like if I listed this in the MLS right now, public water and public sewer, someone would buy it for a bunch of money.
Yeah.
So like, it's, people need, like, the cash as is isn't that big of a deal. Like, literally every flip we put on the market now is conventional financing, quick close, and they're waiving all inspections because that's what they have to do in the deal. So more conventional transactions are like what we thought was such a coveted transaction now. Right?
Man, things to think about. Eric, we got to have you back on to talk about more of this stuff, man. We're running out of time. Dude, this has been absolutely incredible. Eric, I'm going to allow you to, if you want to, I'm going to open the opportunity, but if somebody wanted to reach out to you to learn more about what you're opening up here, and you showed the whiteboard. So if somebody wants to, dig into what you got going on, and also even connect with you outside of that for whatever reason.
Yeah, one of the other things too that I don't talk a lot often with marketing aspects, but I've developed an exit strategy called Novations. I've partnered with, I don't know if anybody that knows Steve Trang. He does a podcast called Real Estate Disruptors. Him and I have partnered to put together a curriculum where we teach you how to wholesale deals to retail buyers. So particularly in today's market, the average transaction, you can pay 20% more than you would if your exit strategy was fix and flip or wholesale, and then sell that property to a retail buyer at retail pricing without actually putting any of your own money into the deal. Awesome. So wholesale style transaction at retail numbers. If you go to brewermethod.com, there's a 60-minute webinar where I've walked you literally through every step of what that transaction might be. You can look it up on YouTube. I was interviewed by Steve Trang on there. Just go to Real Estate Disruptors. It was just over 7,000 views when I looked the other day. And then you can also just email me at eric@crpropertygroup.com. I would encourage you, if you're not part of a mastermind group and you're looking to either grow or build your real estate investment business, Collective Genius is a great place to start. They have 2 groups there. Whether you're doing 30 transactions a year or 300 transactions a year. I was talking to someone earlier, actually from Keller Williams, and they were like, dude, where'd you get all this information? And I was like, Collective Genius. Like, literally everything, both professionally and personally, that I've done in my life the last 4 years, anything that resembles positivity has stemmed from either a conversation or a relationship or a presentation I saw in that group. And I even talked about it today as I finished up. I know you're a big book nerd. I just finished Who Not How.
Yeah. And I just finished that one too, man. That came from CG too.
There that he said to me, and it just sunk. And it was like, you're literally one relationship away from everything you've ever wanted.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So what's really come out of that group has been some extraordinary relationships. Namely, when we got introduced, even before you were Collective Genius, I think because of Gary Harper and my relationship with Gary. And then, so yeah, I would just encourage you to check out Collective Genius. We talk about tons of marketing stuff. A good friend of mine, Ren Irby, who does a tremendous amount of business in a few markets in the South, does weekly coaching calls with the group about marketing and what's working and what's not. Him and I have been collaborating a lot on this project. He's a stubborn old Southern boy. So you can imagine what it might take to get him to
from Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah, man. So, but anyway, I appreciate you having me on, and let me know if if there's a good time for us to reconnect later down the road. I love doing this stuff.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate your time and being on here. And yeah, guys, I'm going to have all of that linked down in the description below. So make sure you do check that out. And I cannot vouch anymore for CG. CG is absolutely incredible. Collective Genius has been a game changer for me. And just, I've only been a part of it for 3.5 months. So it's been absolutely incredible, man. Yeah. So great stuff. Eric, I appreciate it, man. Guys, reach out to him. Let him know if you want to collaborate in any way, shape, or form. And make sure you do check out that little sales training that they got between him and Steve. Steve's been on the podcast a long time ago. So we'll have that link down in the description. Guys, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us and watching or listening, however you are consuming this podcast. If you haven't already, make sure you have picked up the REI marketing book. It is now available, 210 pages. We actually crossed over 500 pre-orders on this thing. So by the time this show goes out, it should actually be completely published and not in pre-order stage. So go pick it up. Free plus shipping offer. You are dropping into my marketing funnel. This is a lead hook, guys, in case you didn't catch it. This is a marketing show, so we're going to teach you that. But the REI marketing book, you can get it at reimarketingbook.com. Go snag it now. Eric, I appreciate your time, man. Thanks for being on.
Thanks, bro.
All right, guys, that's going to do it. Talk to you later.